I want to thank all of the partners who have worked with us on this particular ordinance. Law Department has been tremendous in making sure, again, that we looked at all the case law from around the country, also being very creative in looking at other ordinances around the state as well, and around the country. And I believe what we have today, what we're presenting, is an ordinance that will do exactly what we're looking to do. One, provide an opportunity for equity applicants to compete for these licenses, but two, make sure that we navigate this legal morass that many folks want to find us in. And I would again thank the law department as well as TRIO for helping us with this. I also got to give a shout out to my staff, my team member, Edwina King, who has also been a tremendous help. Couldn't do this without her, and I want to thank her tremendously for her efforts. CREO as well, thank you for what you've done as we move forward. So, Madam President, did you want to say a few words now, or you want to wait until
I'll wait till you're done.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
Well, again, thank you. We're going to make sure we reserve a spot for you. So we're going to walk everyone through the ordinance. It's going to be short and sweet. I mean, last time you remember we had a big press conference. That's not what we're doing this time. We're going to have a big blowout once this thing is passed and we're able to get licensing in the city of Detroit. But for right now, I want to kind of walk you through what this ordinance looks like. So what do you need to know about the ordinance? So this ordinance focuses solely on licensing. And so what's different with this particular ordinance from the last one in particular is the number of licenses that are available. So in this particular ordinance, we've allowed for 76 retail licenses. And right now we're going to talk about the cap or the limited licenses. The unlimited licenses that were available in the last ordinance remain available and uncapped in this ordinance. So your growers, your processors, all still the same, unlimited. Those licenses that are limited, the adult use retailers, as well as the consumption lounges and micro businesses. Again, there wasn't one license increase for the retail, but we did see a drop, if you will. I made an adjustment for a designated consumption lounge, which is at 30 as opposed to 35, and micro business as well, again at 30 versus 35. You know, as a body, we always say that these ordinances are living and breathing documents, so we have an opportunity to adjust and address that as we move forward if it determines that the market and can buffer it, as well as there's a desire for it. That very well may change, but this is our starting point right now in this ordinance. It also focuses on social equity. Very, very important. Again, make no apologies for doing everything we can to provide these social equity applicants an opportunity to compete for these licenses, because many times they're frozen out of the industry. Whether you talk about here in the city of Detroit or you're talking somewhere else around this country, if we were to allow licensing to begin without having any type of social equity element components, we'll see an industry, an adult use industry that looks pretty much like our medical industry in the city of Detroit, which lacks the individuals from the city of Detroit participating and having an opportunity again to compete and build that generational wealth that so many others have found themselves benefiting from in their families. This ordinance also still provides an opportunity for Detroit legacy to have benefits that were outlined in the previous ordinance. The previous ordinance, what's different again with this particular ordinance and the previous one, is that Detroit legacy was utilized as essentially was used to you were allowed to be qualified for a license if you're a Detroit legacy certified resident. This is a little different. We're not focusing on Detroit legacy as an opportunity to enter into licensing or as a requirement. We're focusing solely on the language that is in the state law that focuses on social equity. But Detroit legacy still receives the benefits that we had in the previous ordinance. Previous ordinance allowed for networking opportunities, loans and grants to be used for license fees and other development costs, and also opportunities to purchase city-controlled land properly suited for marijuana businesses at below market prices. And again, that is important because as we've seen in the city of Detroit, it is a major challenge to find zoned space. I know there's a lot of questions about zoning, and that's why we have on this fourth fourth element in the circle, zoning and land use. No. This ordinance does not focus on zoning and land use. I want to let everyone know that it does not focus on that, but we are working on possibilities of adjusting the zoning restrictions as we move forward, but that will not happen at the same time as licensing. Next slide, please. All right, so how do you compete for these licenses? How do you qualify for these particular licenses? So I want to let you know it's 127 points that are available. Total 127 points. And in the event that there is a tie, so if you and another applicant tie, there will be a lottery. It's going to be televised, and we're going to make sure that it is completely transparent because we don't want anyone saying that Detroit didn't do it the right way. But to give you an example, give you an idea of what it looks like in terms of the 127 points, you got 25 points for the business plan, site control, 25 points, due diligence, 25 points. And I'm running right through those because those are elements of the state requirements. So that's not anything different than anybody else will have to do or not do. If you're serious about this particular industry, you're going to have to get those requirements, meet those requirements, to get state qualification. But then we drop down to the next section. It says the Good Neighbor Plan. Good Neighbor Plan that was found in our previous ordinance. In the previous ordinance, we took out the element, and I must say, we were having some challenges trying to figure out how do you qualify an individual's volunteer work in the community. Well, we had a lot of trouble doing that, so we took that element out, but we're going to let you know that everything else that was in the Good Neighbor Plan, when we started talking about the commitment to hiring Detroiters, the commitment to purchasing goods from Detroit businesses, and their pricing commitment, and their commitment to invest in the neighborhood surrounding that particular facility. These are elements, these are items that applicants, both equity and non-equity applicants, will have to commit to before moving forward. Now I must say, I didn't mention this before, but there are going to be two tracks of licensing. There's one track for equity applicants. There's another track for non-equity applicants. So equity applicants and non-equity. We did that purposely because we did not want equity applicants to end up having to compete for these licenses with individuals who are more well-funded and definitely more well-connected. So the focus has always been, again, to provide the best opportunity for these equity applicants to enter into this industry and succeed. Let's go to that next slide. And so as we move down a little further, now we're starting to see a little bit more of what we want to see in our applicants that's different than what the state's requiring. And so documented community leadership. We want to make sure that if you're moving into the city of Detroit, you're working in the city of Detroit, you're a Detroiter, and you want to benefit from this particular industry, we want to make sure that you also look out for your community and know that you are someone who's committed to the community. So you have to have had some leadership role in a duly established, licensed, if applicable, Detroit-based business, nonprofit, religious organization, educational institution, philanthropic organization, community block club, or neighborhood association during the prior 5 years. That's within the last 5 years. It's very important. That's 15 points. And then now the social equity. This is the most intriguing part. And quite honestly, I'm going to be truthful. This may be the part that is either going to excite some or make some a little bit more uncomfortable. But it's definitely necessary, in my opinion. Again, we talk about the fact that we need to allow an opportunity for equity applicants to have zoned space, zoned parcels of land, property. And so if you're an equity applicant or a non-equity applicant, you're going to have two opportunities to qualify for these particular licenses for the points. So for 25 points, if you're a non-equity applicant, you're providing an equity applicant 20 years of paying 50% of market rent for property that is habitable. It's got to be property that can actually be licensable. Not just any piece of land, but it has to be habitable and licensable for the cannabis industry. So it has to be zoned for a particular use. If you're providing 20 years and 50% of a market rent for equity applicant, then you would qualify for those 25 points. The other side is providing equity and creating a joint venture with an equity applicant. Now, if you don't have land, let's say you don't have any other space, but you say you still want those 25 points, well, maybe at that point you decide to enter into a joint venture with an equity applicant of 40 to 50% of equity. All right, so that's 25 points. Very, very important, because when you drop down, it provides an opportunity for 15 points. It's 10 years. We're still talking about right now the non-equity applicant. The non-equity applicant, if you provide an equity applicant 10 years of paying 60% of market rent for similar commercial or industrial property, remember it still has to be licensable, then you do qualify for those 15 points. On the flip side, if you don't have that space, 30% to 40% of equity with a equity applicant in a joint venture will get you those 15 points. And then finally, 10 years paying 75%, allowing an equity applicant paying 75% of market rent will provide you an opportunity to get the 5 points that's available in the social equity section. If you don't have space and you're still thinking about it, well, you have the option of providing or allowing an equity applicant to enter into a joint venture. You both enter into that joint venture where the equity applicant will have 20 to 30% of equity in that business. Now, on the other side, if you are a equity applicant, and this is again where it's different, because we talked in the last ordinance, it was focused solely on legacy Detroiter, and we love legacy Detroiters. But the judge in his writings indicated that that was a challenge for us. So we definitely looked at it from a different perspective this time around, utilizing, as I mentioned before, the language in the state law that focused on social equity applicant, as opposed to legacy Detroiter, which is really just here in the city of Detroit. And so if you're an equity applicant and you're looking for your 25 points, if you're from a municipality that has 35% of the population living below federal poverty level, you qualify for those 25 points. If you're an equity applicant applying for this license, and you are from a municipality that is 30% of the population living below the federal poverty line, it gives you 15 points, and so forth. If you're from a population that has 20% that lives below the federal poverty rate, then that's 5 points there. And then you look right below, these 2 little bit old points. These 2 points are very important as we drop down. If you join the Michigan Joint Ventures Program, this is for both equity applicants and non-equity applicants. If you join the Michigan Joint Ventures Pathway Program, as well as commit to publishing your social equity plan on the state's website, you get 2 points for those, 1 apiece for those 2 items. Now, the reason why that's important, because there's going to be a lot of folks that's going to tie. There's going to be a lot of ties we anticipate. So those 2 points are very important. We also want to make sure that applicants show the world their social equity plans, because if you got a good one, we want other folks to duplicate and replicate what you're doing. And then also, we are really focusing, again, as I've talked about, joint ventures. How do you get individuals who have resources in the same room with individuals who may not have the same resources but have the skills and talents? This is an opportunity for a marriage to take place and benefit both applicants as well as the city of Detroit. Now, I will say this, there are 3 different licensing phases that we are focusing on right now. 3 different licensing phases, and the first phase will begin for those the phase for the non-capped or non-limited licenses will begin pretty much after we approve this ordinance. So the sooner we get this ordinance approved, we will begin the licensing for those non-limited licenses. Again, the growers, processors, what was the other thing? Transporters, that's right. And the what was it again? Safety compliance. Events. Yeah, we don't really talk about those very often because they're non-limited. And those are not the licenses that are going to be the ones that are the most competitive, nor will they be the ones that we're going to see, we built the rubric for. These are the ones that are drawing the most attention here. We also, in those 3 licensing phases, the first one goes out for the limited licenses. Once we approve, the city will determine, and we will all get together and identify what the licensing day when we begin accepting licenses for the limited licenses. And there's going to be a 30-day licensing period, and in between those 3 licensing periods, that's no less than 120 days. So again, we want to stretch it out and make sure that we're doing this right. No rush, do it the right way, and make sure that this industry grows in the city of Detroit in a manner that, again, benefits the city of Detroit, but also does what it can to protect, to the best of our ability, the equity applicants' opportunity to succeed and compete in this industry. And then we also, and what's different again about this license, this ordinance than the other, is before we just had those 3 phases just go through. Well, this one is a little bit different. Again, we always want to talk about transparency. And so what's different this time around is that the city council would then approve the licensing phases as they as we begin entering into them from the city standpoint. So the first phase start off once we determine as a body and as a city when we're going to begin that first phase. But then Creole, who's been working steadfast with a number of applicants, legacy Detroiters, equity applicants, they've been preparing them, doing a great job building business plans and providing them with opportunities for other resources as well, giving them, as I keep saying, an opportunity to compete. And Megan Meslamani, if you want to say a couple words about how you are preparing, come on up. Megan is with Creole, and she is the director of Marijuana Ventures, the city of Detroit. Brand new position, but she's doing a tremendous job. And you want to talk a little bit about what you're doing?
Sure, thank you. Hi everyone, my name is Megan Maslamani. I'm the Director of Marijuana Ventures and Entrepreneurship for the City of Detroit. This is a new department that was created about a year ago. And with the help of Councilman Tate and the Law Department and Creole's resources, we have been able to provide programming, resources, and technical assistance for over 800 potential cannabis entrepreneurs. They have attended over 70 hours of industry expert-led programming to learn about the cannabis industry, to learn about Business 101, beginning from the very bottom of a business plan to how to compete, to how to get funding, to how to get people to invest in your business, and standard operating procedures for a marijuana company. We have been able to provide networking events, and I really want to say thank you to our fiscal sponsor, which is the Michigan Cannabis Industry Association of Michigan, who has been instrumental in helping us put this together. And we plan to do programming and provide resources throughout the year when hopefully this new ordinance passes. So thank you, Councilman Tate. I'll hand this back to you.
Thank you, Megan. Again, tremendous job. Thank you for your work, you and Creole, that you've been doing in preparing these legacy Detroiters and equity applicants. Again, we have no doubt in our mind that they're preparing, but we want to make sure that we remove any opportunity for folks to say, you guys aren't doing it right, you guys are doing stuff behind closed doors. No, City Council will then, Creole would then propose to City Council the various licensing stages, phases, if you will, and it'll be up to Council to vote to approve them and move them forward. And so we're all in this together, both sides of the branches of government in the City of Detroit. And so with that, one last thing. We also wanted, we recognize that there is a commitment from individuals who have, worked in the city, want to work in the city, have licensing in the city, and we had decided to allow for conversion of licenses for medical marijuana facilities that have been licensed up to this point, if they were licensed within the 3 licensing phases. So if there are any holdovers that have a license today, you're going to have to maintain that license And then in 5 years, we will allow that license to be converted from a medical marijuana license. Again, we're talking these limited licenses here. We're going to allow those licenses to be converted to recreational, but you still got to go through all of the hoops that the state sends you through and make sure that you qualify for the inspections and other necessary requirements that we require for anyone opening up a cannabis business in the city of Detroit. But we're allowing that opportunity, so that's something new in this ordinance as well. So that's the high end, of this particular ordinance. We're very excited about it and about this opportunity as we move forward. And I'll open up. This is on me. I'll open up for any questions. Eli.
So I know that you've differentiated between these equity applicants and Detroit legacy category, but can you elaborate, like, what, given that the Detroit legacy concept was what the courts found issue with, how is that category going to manifest in ordinance?
Yeah, so, again, we did not use, part of the issue with the court, leaned towards saying that what we were doing was unconstitutional based upon the fact that we were having a track strictly for Detroiters, not other equity applicants. And so what we did was looked at, we qualified, we make sure that legacy Detroiters would have an opportunity to compete for these licenses, but we believe that it's a much safer, much more potent argument, if you will, legally, if we focus solely on equity applicants as opposed to just legacy Detroiters. But again, the legacy Detroiter element of the benefits that we provide, those don't go away. That wasn't a concern of the court. That wasn't anything that was leaned in on by the court. What he focused on was the way that we license or provide those licenses for individuals who are receiving, going through the process and potentially being awarded.
Understood. So the legacy programs, in terms of the benefits, still exist, but because there were used to be these categories, the 10 years, 15 years, these different tracks. Does that still exist? No, that still exists to be a part of the legacy, to be certified legacy. It's still 10, 15, and 10 and 15 years and 13 years. Those still apply to be certified as a legacy applicant or to be certified as a legacy Detroiter. But that does not solely allow you to enter into the licensing phase. Understood. There's like a variety of other benefits that come with the legacy program
that are separate from licensing.
Sure. And the rubric is also new to this ordinance, that
Yes.
scoring rubric, and that was to satisfy some of those requirements from the courts?
From the courts, but also as we, had an opportunity to look at what we did the first time around, we wanted to make it better.
Sure. And so, given this new ordinance, I mean, what is the status of this lawsuit against the city? Does the city plan to appeal it, or are we now kind of done with that now that we have this new legislation?
Then they're done there. We're now moving forward with this ordinance.
Sure. And does the city have an understanding of revenue captures from taxes, given what you've laid out?
Yeah, so it's more than likely going to be a bit less than what we had last time, based upon the fact that we have more micro businesses that were allowable, as well as designated consumption lounges, 5, actually 10 less of those than we had before. So it'll be smaller. It'll be a reduction in that capacity. But again, this is an opportunity for us to continue to grow in this industry. This is a living and breathing document that we have before us. So as of right now, I believe, and I don't want to give an estimate, that we still have an opportunity for the OCFO's office to provide it to us, so I don't want to step out in front of them. But I do know that it's more than likely going to be somewhat of a slight decrease, certainly as a result of those licenses no longer being available in this phase of licensing. Thank you. Any additional questions online?
You can ask folks to unmute themselves. They need to unmute themselves.
All right, if you have a question, you can please unmute yourself and just ask your question if you're on the screen. You're on Zoom. Anyone? All right.
Tate, this is Sarah Ho with the news. I'm sorry if I missed this. Is the requirements for the legacy Detroiters still staying the same for the yearly, how long they have to live in the city?
Yes, 10
Okay.
years, I'm sorry, 15 years. If you have if you have lived in the city for 15 years, straight up, you are a legacy Detroiter. If you have low income, if you're designated low income, that's 13 years at least. And if you are someone who's been convicted of a marijuana crime, if you want to call it that, if the marijuana conviction, that's 10 years, you would have to live in the city of Detroit. So 15, 13, and 10 years, that all remains the same. Have not made any adjustments to Legacy Detroiter certification.
Thank you.
Welcome. Anyone else?
Hi, this is Annalise Frank with Cranes Detroit Business. If you can hear me, I just wanted to ask if Pro Tem Tate, if you could talk a little bit more about how the city is going to handle the competitiveness. I think I heard like 800 entrepreneurs have been assisted, and there's going to be half of 76 licenses available for equity applicants. So yeah, how is the city going to manage the likely it's sort of rush on licenses and how competitive it will likely be?
Maybe you want to talk a little bit about that? Do you want me to come back around? If you will. Oh, shoot. Don't know if it worked. Let's try it.
Perfect. Can everybody hear me?
We can hear you. This is Megan Mazlamani.
Hello, I'm the Director of Marijuana Ventures and Entrepreneurship in the city's CREO department. So the plan for handling multiple requests when people establish all of their requirements is that we'll be using a lottery process, similar to what the instructions were going to be the first time around, and a resolution that we took to City Council. So it would be the same steps this time. We'd make people aware of what the lottery process was going to include, what it would look like, and people would be aware of that before applying. Of course, we anticipate more demand than we have available, so that is how we'll deal with that process, and we plan to make it extremely transparent and open for the public. Did that answer?
Sarah?
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, that answered it.
All right. Thank you. Any additional questions? Seeing none, Madam President, you want to say a few words?
yep, sure.
And again, we thank you for being here and being supportive as well.
Thank you. Good afternoon. I just wanted to be here physically to thank you, Pro Tem, for your hard work on this issue. To the law department, to your staff, I've seen the long hours that you have put in on this issue. And with so many competing interests, you always stood on principle. And that was about equity and inclusion, which is important to so many Detroiters. And so I'm one council member, but I stand ready to support this ordinance as is. It's about creating generational wealth, ownership, jobs for Detroiters, revenue for our city. And I'm just excited that we finally got to a point where we can put something before council and get this thing moving. So thank you for your hard work on this. I support it, and I'm sure so many other people in Detroit are proud of the work around equity, around inclusion, making sure Detroiters are not just consumers, but we're owners in this industry. So thanks for your hard work.
Thank you, Madam President. Thank you so much for your support as we move forward. So if there are any additional questions, going once, going twice, going 3 times. All right, Q&A is over. I want to thank everyone for participating today. We want to let you know that we're going to have 2 informationals that are going to be taking place similar to how we did last time around. The first informational is going to be via Zoom, taking place on Thursday, this upcoming Thursday at 6:30 p.m. Kathy, how are we making sure folks have that information? Do we have it on the screen we can show? All right. So that's going to be the first one on this upcoming Thursday, 6:30 p.m. And then the following Monday, so next Monday, the 14th, excuse me. I better not forget that day. The 14th will also have informational as well. So the 10th and the 14th both taking place at 6:30 p.m. We'll make sure that the Zoom links will be made available publicly. Get that out to you as well. But with that being said, it sounds like that's it. And thank you all for joining us today. And we're now about to sign off unless we have the link to get show. We've been burning these computers out. We'll catch you next time. Thank you all for joining us today. We appreciate you. We'll get you those links.